So at the start of the Premier League season, there's always a question on people's mind, and that is who is going to win the Premier League. But also, is your team going to survive the drop, and all of those sort of questions. But also, you'll want to know how can you actually profit from that, because there's a great little strategy that you can use that's very counterintuitive. So counterintuitive that when you start this trade, everybody thinks you've gone mad, because it's almost certain that you're going to lose money. However, that is absolutely not the case. So if you want to learn about those things, then just watch the rest of this video. So the first question we're going to answer is who's going to win the league, but also who is more likely to get relegated, because there is actually some stats that you can use, some basis on which you can form this judgment. It's not a complicated mathematical analysis. It's a lot simpler than that. And the truth behind who's likely to be promoted and where teams are going to finish up is a unfortunate consequence of the way that the league is run. However, the great thing is it does give you some level of predictability. So let's start with an easy one. Who is going to win the Premier League? If you look at the image behind me, what you can actually see on this image is a list of the wages paid by each individual club. And these wages are basically paid to players to attract them to play for each of these clubs. And obviously, the more money you pay in wages, the more you pay in transfer fees and all of those things, the better players that you get. And if you actually order clubs in order of wage, then typically that defines their finishing position in these top leagues, not just in the UK, but across Europe. Basically, you buy success with football, and unfortunately, it is really that simple. And it's unfortunate for most football fans, because it means that if you're not one of these top clubs, then it's very unlikely that you will be able to compete at that particular level. What about financial fair play, I hear you say? Well, it's not really financial fair play, because the amount that they can spend is a derivative, it's a percentage of their turnover. And as a consequence, who's got the biggest turnover? Oh, the biggest clubs. So financial fair play is basically a complete farce. And, you know, there are exceptions to the rule. So there are some, every year you get some noticeable exceptions and clubs that seem to be able to punch above their weight. But in terms of competing at the higher level, that is really, really hard to do. And fundamentally speaking, if you look at any particular league table, you rank it according to the amount of wages that are being paid, then that's actually a really good proxy for who's likely to be winning that particular league. But also, when you look at the bottom of this table, are teams that are likely to struggle. And really, there's not much more I can add to that. That is fundamentally the way that football works nowadays. It's unfortunate, but that's the truth. So if you want to know who is likely to win the league or who's going to be competing for those top positions, it will be the club that has spent the most amount of money. So the other thing that we need to cover in this video as well is how do we actually profit from some of this? Because, you know, as the season goes on, it's never particularly straightforward. There are 380 games in a Premier League season. It's played over 10 months. There's lots that can happen, injuries, different competitions. There's so many things that could occur over the course of this particular season, that how do you know when to enter and exit a particular trade? Well, it's something that I've done for a large number of years that has been particularly effective. So let's have a look at that. So the unusual thing about this particular strategy is what we're actually going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to lay the team that looks like they're going to win the title. And this is why you look a complete fool when you do this trade, because if you say to somebody, right, oh, this team is doing well, I'm going to lay them, everybody's going, what? They're almost certainly going to win the title. And the fact is, they probably are. The odds are probably correct. The market is efficient, blah, 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 blah. However, we're not interested in that from a trading perspective. What we're interested in is that variability. So by going into the market and laying a team at roughly the right odds, what we're actually going to do is we're going to achieve a profit because of the variability between when you lay them and the outcome at the end of the season. But in order to understand how that works more specifically, I need to give you an example before we look at the data that we've seen in previous seasons. So most people think about Betfair trading as backing at a higher price than you lay at or laying at a lower price than you back at. And that's what most people talk about. But there are actually many different ways of successfully trading. Now, an interesting thing that you can do is if you go into a market and you lay two items at odds of 2 and you get matched, then you will basically break even. If you can lay those 2 selections within the market below odds of 2, then you will make a profit. And the big bonus about doing this is all of the other selections within that particular market will have a whopping great profit on it. So if you can actually lay 3 things at odds of 2, you will profit. Or if you could lay 3 things below odds of 2, you will make a huge amount of money. And the basic rule of thumb is lay 2 at 2, 3 at 3, 4 at 4, 5 at 5, 6 at 6 to break even. And if you can achieve lower odds than that or more selections, you will make money. What I will do is, in the background while I'm talking about this, is I will put up a demonstration of me going into a market and not actually placing the bet, because you have to wait for these bets to get matched. But you will see me type in these numbers, create the scenario that I'm talking about, and you'll see the effect that it has on a P&L. But the most important thing that you can do when you do this is to actually lay to a fixed liability, because what you're doing is you're fixing your potential loss, but your gain is not fixed. It's sort of, it has potential within the market. And that's the key thing that we're trying to do within this market, is we're trying to lay these teams at relatively low odds. And this is why it feels counterintuitive, because if you're in a Premier League title race and a team is at very, very low odds and it looks like they're likely to win, that's probably the best time to get involved within the market. But it's also the time where if you turn to your friend and said, this team is very, very heavy odds on, they're 105 or something to win the title, I'm going to lay them, everybody will think you're a complete fool. But what we're talking about here is not exploiting the price at that particular moment in time. We're looking at the variability in the market towards the end of the season and the opportunity that it presents to lay more than one selection. So I've told you already, if you can get 2 bets on 2 selections matched below odds of 2, you will make money. So what happened last year? Man City won the title, which was why I laid them. But of course, that was just part of a trade, because Man City started the season at 169 and they got off to a good start. The price came in to 120 because they looked pretty dominant in the early part of the season. But then their price went out to 355. And the reason that happened was nothing spectacularly badly wrong with the Man City team or anything going drastically wrong there. It was just that Arsenal kept on winning. And as Arsenal kept on winning, that put a lot of pressure on the Man City price. And in fact, the price on Arsenal came in to 156. So you can see you could have laid Man City at the start of the season at their low point, but you could also get the chance to lay Arsenal at many opportunities below too, and you would have made a profit on the overall market. And when you look over a number of seasons, the same sort of pattern occurs. And that is because you can't guarantee that a team is going to win every match and completely trounce the league. The season has a number of twists and turns in it, and over the course of those sort of 10 months and 38 games. And even if we look at the season prior to this, Man City went off at 175. They got off to an incredibly dominant start, came in to odds of 103. And it was Liverpool that were mounting the challenge this year. And their challenge basically pushed the price of Man City out to 2.5. Liverpool reached a low of 160. And you could have repeated this process all over again. And that happened in the year prior to that, and prior to that, and prior to that. And of course, you can't guarantee that it's going to work. But all we're looking for is that variability over the course of the season to present this opportunity to us. And it does have a pretty good track record. So this is definitely something that I'm going to be looking at doing again this year. I probably won't lay Man City at the start of the season. I'll wait for that early part of the season to get out of the way. And that may present an opportunity to get in on Man City on a reasonable price. And if you don't want to, try and time your entry that perfectly, just do what you see me do in a number of videos, which is you just drip feed and you get a good average price when you're trying to establish a position in the market. And from that point onwards, then it's down to the fate of what happens within the market itself. You can't guarantee that it will work, but one of the things that you can be sure of is that it has worked for a number of years. So there you have it. When you look at the Premier League, it's dominated by money. It's unfortunate, but true. And that's why a lot of people are a bit sort of fed up with the state of football as it is, because you look at all the top leagues around Europe, and it's pretty much the same pattern that you see everywhere. Teams that have more money to spend end up near the top of the table, and that's just a matter of fact. And the opposite is true for teams that don't have that money. They tend to be relegated. It's a bit different in the lower divisions, where all of those sort of incentives and prize money and so on are a bit more evenly distributed. But certainly in the case of the top tiers, it's absolutely completely dominated by money. Sad, but true. When you're actually looking to take advantage of this, you can take advantage of the many things that happen over the course of the season. Basically, you've got 10 months for the season to unfold, 38 games, and lots can happen within that period. But if you actually look at teams that are very heavy odds on, it's very, very rare for them to basically completely dominate over the course of the season. They tend to have a little few blips here and there, and that sends the price rocketing out, and you can benefit from that. You don't need to know the exact moment of when you're getting in or out. You just need to get a good average entry price and a good average exit price, and you'll be able to profit from that. And certainly over the last few seasons, that has been the case. It's not impossible that you could have a team that completely dominates from the front to the back end of the season. However, that's typically rare. And certainly the profit that you make when you get this variability within the league will more or less cover those moments when that doesn't happen. It's a bit of a longer term trade, but it's one that's very effective.